I think I don't think this one's as bold as the Rutgers one, but another part of me thinks it's like infinitely bolder, at least in terms of national media expectations. I'm just going to say it and then I'll ask you what you think, and then I'll explain the logic or perhaps the insanity behind it. Texas is going to miss the college football playoff. They won't even make it.
Miss it.
Yes.
Huh.
What do you think about that?
That's interesting. I'm pulling up their schedule here right now. Um, Talent wise, just off the top of my head, I mean they lost their two best wide receivers. They lost a lot of kids to the draft. They really did. Um, you know, I guess if Quinn Ewers doesn't turn out as lucky as he was last year, or results, then I could see this happening. And the SEC is really muddled this year. It's very good. It's very good. Um, just looking at their schedule too, as I just pulled it up, they play at Michigan. Um, you know, they play Oklahoma. They play Georgia. Florida, sneaky team. Sneaky team. They're gonna play them at Arkansas, Kentucky, at A&M. I'd probably put this at a 4.5. This is this is a bigger prediction. I'm gonna say
Understandable.
it's interesting though.
I'm going to put it if you factor in national media expectations, I'd say a 4. From my own personal opinion, I put this at a 3 or 3.5. Their secondary stinks. Their interior D line is losing a ton. I mean, they're bringing in Bill Norton to try and make up for two first and like second round NFL picks in Sweat and Murphy. That's not going
Oh
to do
yeah.
anything. Their secondary again pedestrian. Their offensive line was good last year. It was never elite. It was never near elite. Um, I disagree with Joel Klatt when he says that Texas versus Michigan is going to be this matchup, this battle of trenches. That's probably going to be Oregon, Michigan, where you'll see the nation's best D line in Michigan and one of the best O lines playing one of the best O lines and a very underrated D line in Oregon. But I think that Texas just has questions in the trenches, more so defensively. Their offensive line should be one of the nation's better ones. Their secondary isn't good. They do bring in Bolden, Silas Bolden at wide receiver, and Isaiah Bond at wide receiver, and Nyblack at tight end. So they reload, I think, at skill position. And Jonathan Brooks goes off to the draft. But they do have, I mean, they've recruited at a very high level. And I don't question their offense a ton. But having said that, the SEC's very deep at quarterback. And
Oh yeah.
Silas
Oh yeah.
Bolden, Isaiah Bond, CJ Baxter, Jaden Blue, and even Andrew Makuba, who transferred in, I think, from a Clemson. Good safety. And Malik Muhammad, who was played as a true freshman last year. He was pretty decent. They are not they are not going to save you alone from Connor Wiegman and Moose Muhammad, or they're not going to
Right.
save you from Carson Beck and a loaded wide receiver and a defense that should be the same or better than last year. They're not going to save you from a Michigan team who, even without passing the football, could probably run for miles and miles on Texas's defense. That's
Yeah.
making that's a bold assumption in and of itself because they were good at defending the run last year, but their two best players by a mile in that skill are gone, and those were all American defensive tackles. They're out of the picture, and I mean anyone, and I mean this, anyone could throw on that secondary last year. And they have, I don't think they've made the necessary moves to correct that to the degree that they need to. And one more thing, I think Ewers is very very overrated. I don't think he's consistent enough to be an elite quarterback. He can show elite flashes, but he's he's not generational, and he's not consistent enough. Last year against Washington, he started out like horrific, and it took
Oh yeah.
Washington being inconsistent for a quarter and not being an uber talented team, which they weren't in depth, to let Texas come back and nearly win the game.
Yeah.
And they faced an easy, and I mean this in retrospect, pretty easy schedule once you adjust for the fact that Alabama wasn't really good at the beginning of the year and only started to be good at the end of the year. I don't want to take away too much credit because that's unfair, but I do think there will be a reality check when they hit the SEC. I think they'll lose to Michigan, definitely lose to Georgia. I think those are two sizable losses. And then that third one, it could be to A&M. It could be, just looking at their schedule, it could be against Oklahoma. It could be, if everything goes right for Arkansas, could be Arkansas. Yeah, it could even be Florida for the simple fact that Texas last year played in several close games.
Yeah. Really quick on Florida, I will say they have a pretty good roster. I was looking at them recently. They have the hardest schedule by far that I've ever seen. It's insane how many top 25 teams they'll have to play. Be that as it may, going back to the Michigan game, the fact that I mean, it's not going to be a battle in the trenches in that game. It's going to be Michigan dominating in the trenches in that game. What's going to make or break that game is going to be Michigan's. Is I think it's going to be Alex Orgy. I think you know Michigan, even losing Rod Moore, they will be able to relatively lock up in the secondary. Um, just analyzing that game a little bit, but really, when it comes to that game, having it be at Michigan in the Big House is huge for me because of the impact that that the Big House has on every team that they play. For I'm not going to say the crowd forced those two picks that McCord threw in the Ohio State game in the game, but you can't say that they weren't a part of that. That is
Yeah.
one of the top environments in college football. So I mean, when you look at that game, and as I look at that game through a different lens, it becomes less likely that Texas is going to be able to compete. Now, Texas is going to run up some points. It's not that they're not. It's not that Michigan's going to be able to shut them down for very long. They'll run up some points. Coach Sarkisian is probably one of the most aggressive coaches out there. More aggressive. Now nowadays everyone's aggressive, but really through your explanation, I can see it a little bit more. I'd still put this at about a 4.
Yeah. And Texas can beat Michigan because even though Michigan, I think, has a massive advantage in the trenches, Michigan this year is only trench play. I mean, they have
Right.
nothing proven at receiver, quarterback. You can't have only one tight end as your primary receiver. And Donovan Edwards, I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt and say that he's elite. Even if you give him benefit of the doubt, you still need a passing game that involves wide receivers and not just Edwards and a tight end. And what Texas can do is, even if they're losing in the trenches, they can just overwhelm Michigan with skill position play and big plays. All it would take for Texas to win that game is maybe one or two long touchdowns, and maybe they can sit and afford to, you know, let Michigan control the clock because we can just, pop a big play or so. But I don't
Right.
think Texas has beaten Georgia, for example. I think what Georgia will do
Oh
is
yeah.
they'll walk into that stadium, they'll chew them up, they'll spit them out of their mouth, and they'll move on like nothing happened. I mean, Georgia,
Georgia, man.
they did
I mean,
that to Tennessee 2 years ago. Granted, it was in Sanford, but they made Tennessee look like they were nothing. And that Tennessee team, I think, will be better than this Texas team.
oh yeah. And you look at what Georgia does in relation to Michigan. They're they're identical teams with their philosophies and what they do. Georgia just has Carson Beck, which will probably be one of the top quarterbacks in the league this year, in the at least the SEC conference this year. If you put Carson Beck on Michigan, they look. I think they're a top 2 or 3 team.
Yes.
Um, really, when you look at it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this episode of College Football with Sam. I appreciate it. And I would appreciate it even more if you were to hit that like button, comment your thoughts on this video down below, hit that big red subscribe button, and also click that notification bell so that your phone, laptop, or whatever device you use can ding or buzz whenever I release new content and notify you about it so that you can watch more videos like this. College Football with Sam is the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube. We're going to be doing a giveaway when we hit 20,000 subscribers, and we're trying to become one of the best, if not the best, college football channels on YouTube. Your support means so much, and to those of you who are subscribed to my Patreon or purchase merchandise from my store, the links to those are down in the description and pinned comment. Thank you so much. I want to give a shout out to my Patreons. Thanks to Crash2488 for being a Heisman member. Thanks to Spencer Bringhurst, Chris Lane, and Connor Little OH for being All-American members. And thanks to Will Loftus, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being All-Conference members. Have a great day, guys. And if you're listening on Spotify or any non-YouTube podcast platform, please check the link in the channel description to find my YouTube channel. And if you're listening on YouTube, feel free to check out my Spotify, if you so please. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.